Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
That's right. So it's probably not been your normal kind of album release week, has it, this week?
Well, you know what? It's actually not as unusual as one might expect. The only thing that's different is that we aren't really able to like tour the album and play actual shows. But as far as promo goes, it's actually been pretty similar.
So how was the virtual release party on Friday night?
It was super fun. I mean, it's that I guess was different for sure. We usually don't do a virtual thing, but I kind of liked it because you could tune in from anywhere in the world. You didn't have to be in the same city that we were actually playing in. So that part was cool. Um, the show went over really well, and there were lots of people that hopped onto Instagram to join us for a chat like this afterwards. And my friend Travis Collins, who is an Australian artist, joined me on the chat as well. So it was really great. I'm glad that we could do something.
So I guess with Travis, did the time change kind of just about work out there then, being a late evening in Canada?
Yeah, it actually did. It was his Saturday at noon, I believe. So I'm sure he had a mimosa off camera.
So over the weekend, you were at the Spotify Billboard in Toronto. How cool was that?
Pretty cool. I don't know if you've ever been to Toronto,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's a massive billboard there. Spotify has been so great to us, as have all our streaming partners. But we've had that billboard a few times, and it is shocking every single time I see it because it's not small.
So do you get much kind of notice that that's going to happen?
I think this time they gave us a bit about like maybe a week or so of notice. So we did just to make sure that they have all the current photos and all that kind of thing. But it still hits differently when you actually see the billboard in Toronto, not just the graphic that they've created.
So being on a billboard in Toronto must be quite a world away from small town Saskatchewan. I,
Yeah.
I know Saskatchewan of Regina and Melville, and that's about it.
Do you really? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I'm very impressed. That is much more than some people, even from Canada, know of Saskatchewan. So well done. My hat goes off to you. Yeah, I'm about 2.5, I'll say, hours um, southeast, I guess, of Regina. So yeah, definitely small town girl. Where my husband and I live, the town has, I think, 800 or so people. Yeah, so it's a world away, indeed.
Have you felt a bit kind of tucked up though for the last, what are we at, nearly a year now, really? As you say, yeah, we're out traveling, we're out touring.
Yeah, well, there's been pros and cons. I mean, obviously, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that a massive con is the condition of COVID-19 itself and the people that it's taken away from us and the jobs that it's taken away from myself and so many other people. That is a massive con, and I definitely miss performing. It's my favorite thing in the world to do, so that's tragic. But my husband and I have been together for almost 9 years, and this is the most time we have ever spent together in those 9 years. So that part's amazing. I've not taken a second of my time at home for granted. And I feel like we're kind of cheating because we live on a farm, so we have all the space in the world. I don't feel as cooped up because I have 10 acres that I can go and take the dogs for a walk and go outside. I mean, maybe not right now when it's this time of year. It's a little chilly, but it hasn't been quite as bad. And I feel bad saying that because I know there are some people that are really struggling with that exact feeling of kind of isolation.
So looking at the album, the first single, Country Girl, was released all the way back in October 2019. So much has happened since then. How did the album kind of look in your head when you first released that song?
There wasn't going to be an album in my head when I first released that song, believe it or not. Um, the plan was sort of to go into the studio, record, write, release 2-3 songs at a time, and really just do the singles thing, because when the world looked the way it did back then, that was the way for me to be at a creative peak. That was the way for me to write something, get really excited about it, record it, and release it often and frequently. So everything was fresh and new and exciting. But, then when the world changed, obviously that wasn't going to be logical anymore. So, a lot has changed.
But you had kind of quite a few months in that period, because at the start of 2020, you were out on tour and you got your first number one with Country Girl. Kind of how did it feel to get that number one, having already had kind of a platinum selling single, a gold selling single, to then finally get that all important number one?
Yeah, it felt, I mean, it was a little bit of a relief, because I feel like I had put so much pressure on myself. This is the one thing you haven't done. You've got the Junos and the CCMAs and like you said, the golds and platinum, and that is all astounding, and it's far beyond anything I ever thought that my team and I were capable of. And there was always just this looming thing over my head, and that was that number one that I didn't have. So it was exciting. It was relieving. It just felt so great. And then it sucked because this is so first world problems, but never in my mind did I ever think we would get that number one at all. But even more than that, I definitely didn't think that I would achieve that number one mere days before a global pandemic was going to shut the world down. So I was on this tour. We were 2 or 3 shows into like 60, and we got sent home, and now I'm still home. So it's been a little bittersweet. I shouldn't say it sucked. It definitely didn't suck. It's been bittersweet because all of those exciting things, but I haven't been able to play that song live for people. Like, I could probably count on both hands how many times I've actually been able to play Country Girls live for people.
So you kind of released the next single, Halfway Home, a few weeks into kind of the lockdown. When you released that, was there the idea of we just need to get music out for people, or was there any thought of delaying it?
We were actually just following the plan. We knew that Country Girls was going to be the first single. We knew that Halfway Home was going to be next, followed by Map Dot. So at that time, we didn't really know how long this situation was going to be going on for, and we just thought, let's stay the course. We've got 3 singles that are ready to go, so we can continue to release music for the next year-ish, maybe longer, depending on how those songs do at radio. So we were, to be totally honest, we were just sticking to the plan, and it ended up working really well because it was sort of timely in the way that I had actually already shot the video for Halfway Home back in 2019 when I was on a different tour with Paul Brandt and High Valley and Hunter Brothers. And I think that it was kind of a really nice reminder for people about where we're eventually headed. We're gonna get back to live music. We're gonna get back to hugging people and cheersing people and enjoying all those things face to face again. So I think that we couldn't have planned it any better had we known there was a global pandemic coming.
So talking of Map Dot, there's quite a high profile co-writer on it with you. So what was it like to write with Liz Rose?
I've written with Liz a handful of times now, and I am always amazed by her talent and her ability. Map Dot specifically was an incredibly memorable write with Liz. I've written with her enough times to know how she works. I know that when the song is done, when we're done writing a song and we're about to put a vocal on, she's like, well, my work here is done. Now you do what you do, and I'm going to leave you, So, but I remember sitting on the couch with Liz and saying, okay, I have this title that nobody has really gotten excited about before. So I'm just going to say it. The title is Map Dot. I don't know. Does that interest you? It didn't really interest people in the past, but I really want to write it. And she said, well, what do you want it to be about? And I said, well, about my hometowns. I kind of call 2 towns in Saskatchewan home. And she just said, tell me a little bit about them. And I did. And then she blurted out the first verse, and my jaw was dropped because what she blurted out in that moment was exactly how the song turned out. And I just remember her saying, I didn't write that, you did. Like, you just said that. And I was like, well, not so eloquently. So it's always amazing to write with Liz.
And then kind of what do you take away from those sessions for like your other writing?
I mean, I don't want to say that I don't take anything away, but I really do like to treat each session as an individual session, because so many people have different writing styles and personalities. And that very much plays a factor into how a session turns out, as does just the energy and how much coffee I've had that morning. So I really just like to treat them as individuals and kind of just start fresh every time I'm in a session.
So the surprise for Canadian fans will probably be the addition of Travis Collins on the album. I know you obviously went to Australia back in 2019. So how did the kind of recording of the track go with him being the other side of the world and about as far away as you can be, really?
It's pretty much the parallel opposite. Yeah, it's funny because I've had the good fortune of being a part of numerous duets now in my career, and it's one of my favorite things to do is to share a song with a person that I am a fan of or that I care about. So it's kind of funny because it wasn't that different from recording any other duet. I don't think I've ever been in the same room as the other person when I've recorded a duet. Gord and I were in the same room, but his vocals were already done. So I've never had that, both people in the studio collaborating in that moment before. So it actually didn't really matter that he could have been in Australia or he could have been in Melville. It didn't really make a difference. So it was great.
So with the song already written prior to the pandemic, was that song always your intention to have a duet on it?
No, it wasn't. And you might hear that on the record now because we included the demo of Leave Each Other Alone, and it is just my voice on it. We had sort of, in the writing room that day, I remember a few times some of us were like, oh, this could be a duet. And that was about as far as that went. We didn't intentionally write it that way. We didn't have anybody in mind when we were writing it. It really was, as far as I knew, if I was ever going to have the opportunity to record it, it would be by myself. But meeting Travis and hearing his vocals and watching him perform changed all of that instantly.
And what was his reaction then when you asked him to be on it?
Well, we talked to his management team first just to kind of feel it out and see, because I didn't know if that would be something that would interest him or not. And he was excited. I don't even think I gave him the song yet. I think I just said, do you want to be on my album? And he said yes. And then I panicked because I was like, oh my gosh, I only have one song in mind. And he already said yes. What if he doesn't like it? But thankfully he really did. And he was great to work with in the sense that he even had a few production ideas too that he had brought to the table, which kind of made me feel like he really did love the song. So it was a pleasure.
So when you were touring Australia with Travis and the band, kind of what have you taken away from that trip now?
Oh, so much. I mean, little things, big things, just a lot. It was my first time in Australia. And I was fortunate enough that my best friend was over there at the time. So we kind of had a few built-in guides. But, it's funny. I think the biggest thing that I took away from Australia as a whole, maybe not necessarily the country music scene, but it's quite similar to Canada. And I don't know if I mean the people or the atmosphere. I don't know what it is, but there was just a vibe that I really did kind of feel at home in the strangest way. And the other thing that I took away from that is that there is a massive, very bright, shining, exciting country music scene over there in Australia. And I cannot wait to get back.
So is Europe on the map as well then for you?
Yes, we obviously don't know when, especially now, but we've got some plans for Europe.
Excellent. So with the album, you said obviously it featured the 3 demo versions. What was the idea then of putting these on there?
Well, the idea was always to call the record the demos. As soon as we knew that we were going to put together a record, I fought really hard to make sure that this album was called the demos. It was just a concept that I really believed in and thought the fans could get on board with. In order to see a little bit more about how the songwriting process is, at least for me, because everyone's a different writer. So the whole concept is basically that since I wasn't able to get into the studio to write and to re-record some of these songs, not things, I went into my back catalog and I thought, this is a song that I never found the right timing for. This is a song that I almost recorded, but we didn't have enough room and I didn't. So I picked all those songs that didn't quite have a home, and we prettied them up. We polished them. We got them fresh and ready for the world to hear. And I brought that back to my label, and they really liked the idea, but they were concerned that that wouldn't drive the concept the way that I thought it would. So then I said, well, what if I put the before versions of the demos before we freshened them up? What if we put the demos on there as well, the way they were written, the day they were written? And that did the trick. That was what let me keep the title. And I'm actually really glad that that happened, because that does exactly what I wanted it to do. And that was to kind of peel back that curtain and give people a better look.
So what was it like then the first time you heard back some of those demo tapes as you listened to them?
It depends on the song. Some of them didn't change very much at all. Like, for example, Country Girls really didn't change hardly at all, which is why I didn't include the demo, the before demo on the album, because I didn't know if you'd hear a difference. But then, of course, a song like Leave Each Other Alone, I loved the demo, but I absolutely was completely head over heels for the way that it turned out with Travis's vocals on it. So some changed a lot, some changed a little, but they were all really, really exciting to see and hear.
So outside of music, you've been keeping yourself busy with your Handpicked by Jess range. Obviously, it's such a tough time at the minute for musicians, but also retailers. So how enjoyable is this kind of putting this range together?
It has been so fun. I have been wanting to do this for years now and never really had the time or the manpower. And now we do. We have the perfect setup, and we're able to take the time and sit with it and get the branding just right. And it felt like the perfect time to do it even more so, because like you'd said, there are some retailers out there that are struggling, especially small businesses. And I love supporting small businesses. I'm the kind of person that if I like a brand, you're going to hear about it nonstop, just because I believe in them and I want them to succeed. So if there was a way for me to use my platform in some way, shape, or form to directly get those products into my fans' hands so that they could also fall in love with them, this is it. And it's been a lot of fun to select the brands and work alongside them and see their excitement about the growing audience that Handpicked by Jess is getting. So it's been a much different project than anything I'm used to. And we're working on the second box right now, and I'm already thinking about the third.
So when December's boxes sold out, did you just kind of think, is that when you knew, yes, this is the right thing to do and we got to keep going with it?
Yeah, I had no idea. Obviously, the first time you do anything, there's a lot of unknown, and I didn't know how many people were going to be wanting these boxes, and I didn't want to bite off more than I could chew. So they sold out in just under 2 minutes. So I had a little bit of regrets. I was like, oh my gosh, there are going to be people that don't get it, that want it, and I'm so disappointed. But it just meant that we had the ability to reach out to more brands and do even more for the second one. So it was disappointing for a minute, and then I realized how great of a problem that is to have. So hopefully more people can get their hands on the second one.
Now, looking back to 2011, it's been 10 years now since you first entered the Sask Music Next Big Thing competition, and you've got on to have, hundreds of thousands of listens each month. What would you say to yourself back then, right now?
I don't think that I would believe anything I would tell myself back then. Man, I think I would just tell myself to keep going and to just make sure you really enjoy all those moments, because every new thing that I did, like, I used to love competing, and the reason why was not because I was a competitive person or not because I would win often, but because I loved to sing. So I think I would just make sure to tell myself not to get so nervous, not to worry so much, move around a little bit and have some fun.
And it's now been 7 years since Cheap Wine and Cigarettes, and it's still played on the radio. Are you kind of surprised again at like the longevity of that song now?
Oh yeah, I actually can't believe it's been 7 years. That's so crazy. There are times in this industry where I feel like I've been around for 50 years. And there are times where I feel like I just started this yesterday. And, you know, there is no way we possibly could have predicted the success of Cheap Wine and Cigarettes. It's absolutely what I call a career song. It may never happen again. I hope it does. But if it doesn't, you know, I'm really proud of that. That was the first song that my producer, or one of the first songs, I should say, that my producer, Corey Crowder, and I worked on together, and we really took a risk by doing that whole album, and it paid off.
And with it being one of such your early songs, is it going to be one of those songs you'll just never get tired of playing live?
Yeah, definitely. I think that there are some songs that I only get tired of playing live because they don't seem to resonate with the crowd. So it could be a different song every night, but Cheap Wine and Cigarettes is never one of those songs. I will always get excited to sing that one.
So it has been obviously a busy start to the year. As restrictions are slowly beginning to ease, what kind of aims have you put in place for the rest of this year?
Well, I'm trying. I'm a realist. So as much as I would love for, you know, all the borders and everything to break down tomorrow, I don't think that's going to happen. So a lot of the things that I want to do for this year aren't necessarily focused on live performances in person. So right now we're focusing on Handpicked. We're going to be shooting some music videos for the next singles whenever we decide to announce what those are from the album, and just continue to you know, enjoy the album alongside everybody else.
Well, thank you very much for giving us time. So we're absolutely loving the album, and we're keeping promoting over here in England. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It means the world.
No, I appreciate it. And then hopefully we can see you over here, well, within the next 18 months or so, let's hope, really.
Yeah, I know, that would be amazing. The UK, I think is actually the next one that we're hoping when we can do that. I think that's where we want to get to the next. So you're up next, buddy. We're coming eventually.
Brilliant to hear. Thank you so much, Jess. Really appreciate it.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Bye.